Hey everybody, welcome to the webinar. We're going to give it a few more minutes for people to join, maybe just another minute or so, because we just turned over onto the 2 o'clock hour, and I see some folks joined up already. That's great. We usually have a few stragglers, so we'll give them about a minute to jump on while I get my screen ready to go. All right, looks like we got a few more folks jumping on, so we'll just go ahead and get going with this. And I think a lot of you attended these before, so you kind of know the spiel. But essentially, we're going to be going through list views, the Crow Canyon list views. We're going to go through the Crow Canyon list rollup feature, and we're going to go through the how you can use list rollups in NITRO reports. So we get a look at those things. As we go through it, feel free to ask questions in the questions box that you'll see in the GoToWebinar panel on your screen. There should be an option for entering questions. We have Scott on the call as well. He'll help answer them, and we will call out questions towards the end that we want to get answered. So we'll, if you have any questions during the webinar or afterwards, certainly feel free to reach out, and we'll get those answered. I also want to point out that we have a number of interesting things happening with everyone's kind of self-confinement here with everything that's going on in the world. We're going to be pumping out a whole bunch of webinars. We're going to be doing a few more workshops, probably a little more than we usually do. So keep an eye out for that, for some online learning, online resources. I'll mention these again at the end of the call, but I just want to point out that we have a few more webinars coming up about our request manager. We have a webinar coming up about our self-service portal, and we'll be adding more of these as we go along. And also point out that we have a few more upcoming NITRO workshops. This is the one we're working on today. But then in April, just about a couple weeks from now, we'll be doing another one talking about the advanced approval process or approval process using the custom actions and workflows. So I think a lot of people will get some interesting details on how to get those things set up. But for today, we're going to focus on the Crow Canyon list views and why you might want to use a Crow Canyon list view instead of a SharePoint list view. The rollup, I think, hopefully is fairly obvious because SharePoint doesn't really have a way to roll up multiple lists into one view. So we provide that feature, but I'll talk about list views first, and then we'll dive into the rollup side of things. So what I've done here on the screen, that I assume everyone can see it, please pipe in if you can't. What I have here, I've configured a regular SharePoint list view in the classic interface, and we will touch on the modern as well. But this is in the classic interface where you have a standard SharePoint list view. But then down below it, I've also put a Crow Canyon list view, and I'll kind of point out some of the things that are a little different about each one, and some of the limitations of the SharePoint one versus the Crow Canyon one. So just trying to hide my panel here. Okay, looks like we're good. Okay, so the first thing to really kind of point out here is the SharePoint list view is pretty, kind of plain vanilla. There's not a lot of styling going on here. It's just got the items that you can see. That's great. You can pop them open, click it, pull up on dialog. I think I'll pop open a dialog box where you can see it, the item. And that's all well and good for showing list items, but in some cases you might want to take that a step further. Um, but let's go ahead and see what the options are for the list view here. And one of the things you have to do with the SharePoint list view is you have to edit the page, right? So if you want to change things about this web part, you got to edit the page. Well, first of all, actually, to get it on the page to start with, you have to edit the page and then add it as a web part from the web part options at the top. So we'll go to the insert, you go to app part, and then you can select the list you want to put on there. Now, once you select your list, you put it on your page, and that's great. Let's go to the edit web part option. And one thing you'll note right away here is that you're limited to one particular view, and you're not actually tied to the view that you first set it up with. So I actually set this up with the closed, the closed tickets view, right? This one right here. But it actually broke that inheritance in the SharePoint web part, and it's now got this own view, which is specific to this web part. So if I go and make changes to this closed tickets view, they're not going to be reflected in this web part. So you have to make the change, you might have to make the change in multiple places. If you have that same view or same kind of concept or different dashboard pages, use it looking at the same information, that's going to make you have to go and do that multiple times, right? So that's one thing to note here. There's one view and it's kind of broken. Sure, you can go and edit it. Sure, you can reconnect it there. It's going to give you an error. We can hit OK. That's fine. I'm going to do that because I did make a slight change to this closed tickets view that you'll see in just a moment. They have all the other standard SharePoint web part options, which are nice. I mean, you got the title you can put in there, which is cool. You can adjust the size. You can play with the layout. And, there are things you can do with this. So certainly you can make it a little more interesting than what it is out of the box, right? I mean, it's not just a list with that you're stuck with. I mean, you're static. That you can make some changes to it as you go along. You see some extended options down here. That's all well and good, but I think there's some key features that our Crocanian list view has that are going to make it more attractive for using it. So let me go ahead and hit OK, and you're going to see the one right away here. So when I change this around, I'm going to save this page. This right here. We've added description onto this field. Someone went ahead and put this huge description on there, and now my whole list view looks all crazy. Like, what's going on here? This doesn't look good. This is, you can get around it with some JavaScripts and whatnot, but you have to know how to write the JavaScript and do all that. And that's where Crocanian list view really comes into play, is that we've added those things into it so that it can manage these types of issues directly without having to know code or have to write any JavaScript. And you'll see I actually have that description field in our Crocanian list view because it is tied to that closed tickets view. And you don't have that same issue. This is the same ticket. You'll see it's the same number, same case ID. When I click over to it, you'll see it's got the same description in here. But the key thing is it's not showing it. It's not causing your list view to go haywire, and your appearance is consistent. So you don't have to worry about long descriptions, long text, get work log going, or the version enabled multi-line text field that could get kind of crazy. You're safe from that with this Crocanian list view. And you'll see you also have a lot of the same options up here that you would get with a regular SharePoint list view. One of the key differences is that the SharePoint list view, all the stuff's up here in the ribbon, but it's just going to be here in its own kind of custom ribbon below. And you have a lot more control over what you show here. So with the regular SharePoint list view, you don't get a lot of control. This is all shown no matter what. Again, unless you go and put some custom scripting, custom styling on it and do some stuff with it. It's all there. But maybe you don't want them to have access. The users, you don't want them to have access to these custom actions. You don't want them to have access to some of these other things. That's all controllable from the Crocanian list view. That's all something you can decide. And one other thing, key difference I'm going to point out before we dive into the Crocanian list view configuration specifically, is the export to Excel feature. Now you get that in both places. SharePoint list view has it, and the Crocanian list view has it. So the export to Excel, if I click that, you'll notice what it's going to come up with an error, but this also does come up down here at the bottom. You got this IQY file. So the IQY file, normally Excel can open it and it's not a problem. We have seen some customers have difficulty with that. There's some settings in place. They don't recognize the file type. It can cause some issues. It's just a different type of file that Excel should be able to deal with, but sometimes cannot. The difference here is that you're going to get an XLS, an XLSX. So it's going to be directly an Excel file that you pull out of it. It's not a table. It's not going to have fancy styling. It's just going to be the data. And that's typically what people want when they pull out the data from SharePoint. They want that data. They don't want it to be a fancy table or stylized. They want it to be just the data, right? And now you can take it, export it, and do with it as, you can use it in Excel for different types of reports or exporting or whatever you want to do with it. But it gives you that direct link to make it an XLS file. That's another key difference I want to point out before I get into these list view configurations. So to configure the list view, that's going to be coming from the list view web part, which is part of NITRO Studio. We can get to it by going to our site settings. So I just came to this one from the site settings. So let me back up a page. And you'll notice on your site settings, you have links to a number of things in Crow Canyon. So you're going to have list views, which is what we're going to look at today. But you also just want to point out, you do have access to a bunch of other things here that you might not be aware that this is another way to get to these Crow Canyon tools. Going through site settings gives you access to the NITRO Studio page. There's some site settings, which I'll go through in a little bit, and then the list rollup, which we'll talk about, and the list view. So if I go to the list view option, it's going to give me a place to manage my list view definitions. So this is where those configurations are coming from on this page here. So these configurations on this web part are coming from this configuration. So if I click it open, you'll see what the options are. Give it a name, that's fine. And we'll give it, this is another cool thing, that another difference that you're going to have is that you can actually pull in a list from a different site. I think it's even a different site collection. You can put in a URL. Yeah, it's actually a different site collection. So you can put in a URL for a different site collection, pull it in, we'll read the list, and we'll get the information and populate it onto that web part page. So in this case, we're getting it from the current site collection, and we're going to get it from that tickets list. Now here's another key difference, is you can actually select multiple views for that configuration. So now I'm not limited to just my closed tickets. I can also do my open tickets. I can also do my assigned tickets. I can also do all tickets, all items. Whatever you want to do, you can put there different views. You can show them as tabs or drop downs so that you can. I'll show you kind of what that difference looks like. We're figured as a drop down now. We'll leave it that way. And then the other thing too is it's not going to break that inheritance. So if you go and make a change to this closed tickets view, that's going to be reflected on that web part page. So you don't have to change it in multiple places. You change it in one place, the view on the list itself, and then you're good to go. Let's view grid settings. So how is this going to display on your page? What's that going to look like? And you'll see that there's options here for delaying loading of items. That's for if you have a lot of items and you want to show the page and you don't want to wait for all those items to load, you're going to get that loading circle. It'll just take a little while, but the user will see other elements of the page before the list view loads, and that's in case there's a lot of items there. We can enable an automatic refresh where it will, it's just the same as like the AJAX asynchronous settings that you get with a regular standard SharePoint list view. You could set it up the same way here. You have a different, set your number of seconds for when it gets refreshed. We can give it a width. So if you want to squeeze it down to a certain size, maybe for mobility, maybe you want to put it on a mobile device, you can squeeze that max width down to a number of pixels that will work on a smaller screen. So you can put it, the 1550, I think is kind of the normal size, the full screen for desktop, but you can pare that down if you want to. Items per page. So we can choose how many items we want to show on that page. So if we go back here, you'll see that there's only a few items here. If we go to open tickets, I think there's going to be, I thought there were going to be more there for open tickets, but there weren't. That's okay. And so there's nothing on the my assigned tickets, but as you get more items here, you'll get some pagination, and you can control that by configuring the list view to show more items per page. So you can show up to 50. It'll just extend your page down. That's fine. But you can have up to 50 items. We can also control how many items we're actually fetching from that list. So I know some of the more SharePoint modern UI settings allow only for 100 items. And this is going to be true in the modern UI for the Crocanian list view as well as the classic. We can set that higher. Of course, we're going to limit it to 5,000 because that's what the Microsoft recommendation is for the number of items to show in a single view. So we're not going to exceed that, but you can pull more than 100 items, which is the limitation you get with the SharePoint standard modern list view. So remember how I showed you that description that was blowing up the list view for this SharePoint one? It might do the same for the Crocanian list view if we turn this off, but we have this option available, so you can set your row heights and have them fixed at a certain level. We can show your grid lines, so you can kind of get a separation between the items. We can enable row filtering, which gives you kind of the standard SharePoint option of filtering. It's a little different, but we can go in here and filter. You can see that there's a filter right here. We can just do oh, there you go. You got a drop down filter that you can pull in. And then you can do the same thing over here, any one of these. So you got those filters, but that's similar to what you get with the standard SharePoint list view where you get the drop down and you can pull in a filter this way. Okay. Alternate color, so that helps to, again, differentiate between the items, and we've enabled that here. You can see a light in the dark and a light in the dark, but you can turn that off. We also have options, and this is where those buttons you can hide or show and gives you more control over it. So if we wanted to allow new entry, we could, or we could turn that off. And let's go ahead and turn some of these things off. I need to leave the launch form and dialog on there, but some of these other ones I can turn off. So Crocanian actions we can turn off. We can hide the email, we can hide the print, we can hide the list settings, and we can even hide the export to Excel. And then we have extended settings here for defining the column width. So another limitation with the SharePoint list view is that you can't, without adding in your own JSON text, you can't define how wide that column is going to show. This gives you an option to do that, where you just specify the column name, give it a width and the number of pixels that you want it to show, and that's what it's going to be set to. All right, so we're going to go ahead and save the settings on this one. And so anytime you make a change, this is another slight difference between the list view, the SharePoint list view and the Crocanian list view. You make a change here, it is going to be automatically applied here, but you do have to do a refresh. And the refresh actually happens back at this in that site settings. So I mentioned I was going to go to the NITRO site settings. We can do that, and this just makes sure that all those changes we just made are going to appear. So if you put this in private browser, you'd see it, it would be there. Because the cache isn't enabled in the private browser. But we just need to go to this NITRO, I'll just show you real quick. You go to NITRO site settings, you go to cache site metadata, and then you can hit reset cache. So that just gives you a way to reset it so that it's going to show the changes that we just made. Without that, it could take a couple cycles. You might have to close out the browser and come back in, that kind of stuff. This just gives you a way to kind of force that change over quicker than you might normally see it. So if we refresh this, and give it a moment to load, you see all those buttons disappeared because we hid them all. We turned off all those settings, so now you don't have those. So that gives you a way to control it. And you'll see that what we've done over here with these items is that you can see all of the list views, and you see here's more items on here than we had before. And you have it as a drop down. So again, you can have multiple views, you can toggle through them. And just one more thing I want to show you on the views on that piece of it is if we go to our configuration for that list view, and we go to tabs, let's save the settings, and go back, reset the cache, and then go back to
list views here, refresh the page. And let's give it a moment, come up. And now you can see these list views are across the top here as tabs rather than as a drop down over here on the right hand side. So you can see there's you can toggle through and toggle through to the different ones. I might make it a little more explicit as to what view is what views are available for the user to see. Now we talked about all this. How do we actually get this onto a page, right? That's gonna be the question, because I mentioned early on the SharePoint list view. We can just go to edit page, add it, and you're good to go. That you can configure your settings. That's fine. This one, in the classic mode, and it's the key difference between the classic mode and the modern mode, is that you go to the list view web part, list view web part here, add list view to pages in site. This is where you decide what page you want to show it on and where you define that in your settings. So this is what I did when I added this page for this demo today. I put the site pages, list view page, put it at the bottom, give it a header text, and then hit add, and then it puts it on the page. So that's how you do it in the classic. Modern, you're going to get a lot of the same settings, a lot of the same options. It's just going to be a direct edit of the page to get it on there. So if we edit this page in the modern side, so we have a similar list view here where I made some configurations. And if we add a new web part, we can directly add that list view web part from the list here. There's a list view croquet right here. Add that. We can edit it to add the connection. So again, we can put a URL to either the local site collection, or it could actually be to a different one. Let's just go to here, add it in, choose our list, tickets, give it a title. And again, now you go through this, you're going to have a lot of the same settings you have on the other side. Just looks a little different, but it's pretty much a lot of the same stuff they have in the classic mode. Tabs versus drop down for the views. You can show delay loading of items. You could do the automatic refresh. You can do the items per page limit. Again, maxing out at 5,000 for returned items. Same stuff, fixed row height, show grid lines, enable row filtering, all that stuff's here. Just a slightly different look and feel to get it configured, but that's okay. You just get it configured and you're good to go. Again, you can disable or hide the custom actions. You can enable hide those buttons, other email button, print button, all this stuff we're showing up here we can hide based on the settings over here on the right hand side. And then you have the same the JSON column with settings in the web part settings over here. So you configure that, get it configured, refresh your page, and you're good to go. So that's the modern way, the modern view, modern pages. That's how you get those things added, these web parts added.
So James, there was a question
sure.
about the list title missing when you'd made some changes. I think that was in the classic, if I remember. Yeah, right there. I guess the title, but you can add it with some JSON apparently. That might be just a setting, right?
Yeah, it might have been something I think when I changed the tickets list here, it blew out the title I had. That's interesting because we add the title through. Usually we add the title through here. Yes, I'll check into that. I did notice that. I think it's a little bit of a snag. So I'll make sure. I'll check with our dev team on that to see if we can recreate that issue and identify why that was happening and make sure that doesn't happen for you folks who are using it.
Okay. All right. When you go to tab view, the title goes away, is what the person is saying. Tab view.
Interesting.
Like the different views. Okay.
Yeah,
well, we'll look into that, I guess, and see. Sometimes in a demo, it's hard to recreate it exactly, but it's definitely something we'll.
No, thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate that, and we'll certainly look into it as to why that's happening when we change from the drop down to the tab, because I'm seeing it happen here too. So, all right, okay. We'll look into that. No big deal.
All right.
But one thing I showed you, if you somehow put this web part in the wrong part of the page, or you want to change where it is, it's a simple matter of going back to that list view and going to the add list view to pages insight, and then re-adding it. And then we can come back into here, edit our page, and delete the one we don't want. So we edit this. And we know this is croquet in list view 1. We have croquet in list view 2. We actually want it down here, not up here. We're just going to go ahead and delete that. So data's still all there. We're just talking about looking at it, different ways to see it. So we're not deleting any data. It's just a view into the list. So we'll save that. Okay, so list rollup is, that's kind of the long and short of the list view. I think there's that kind of covers it. And any questions, Scott will pipe in if there's anything that you guys want to get an answer about those list views. But I think in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and move into the list rollup side of things, and go from there. So the list rollup as a web part, as coming from NITRO, is going to be a similar type of experience to create it and add it as with the croquet list view. But there obviously is going to be some key differences. So I've created one here. It's got a link between this tickets and archive tickets. So a lot of you folks who might be using our ticketing tools, IT, work orders or whatnot, you might over time have archived off some of those to a different list, or if you're archiving documents for a different type of project or whatever, you want to see that, you want to have that information in one view. You can set that up through the list rollup. The other option with list rollup, because now we're talking about kind of closely tied items, right? A tickets list and an archive tickets list. Well, the archive tickets are just the deleted tickets that are moved off and saved for other purposes, historical purposes. We actually might want to pull in information, maybe tasks across multiple departments, multiple site collections. We can do that with list rollup. So even if you have multiple tickets lists, active tickets lists, you could do tickets, work orders, and requests. You can put them all into one list rollup view and plop it onto a page. So how do we do that? Well, first you have to configure the list rollup. And so again, if we go back to our site settings over here, and we go to our list rollup option, we'll go to manage list rollup. So there's one I've already created, and I'll just show you what I've done. And I'll go through setting up another one on the modern side, just to show you what that's all about. So what you have on the front page here, you have some options for whether you allow new entry or not. You can launch the form in a dialog. There's some actions for editing or deleting items. You can show those there, or you can hide them. The UI settings are just, again, kind of like the grid settings. What's it going to look like when I put it on a page? Do we have a fixed row height? Do we have grid lines? Or we're going to show row alternate color? You can manage all that from here. Then you get the columns. So these columns are going to be the ones that you map to the actual column on the list. So this is what's going to show on the list view of that list rollup, right? So if we go over here to our list views page, you'll see you got the same things: title, category, issue type, requester, title, category, issue type, requester, et cetera, et cetera. And we can move these around. So if you create them, if you create a new one, and I want to show the modified date, and that's going to be a date time column. You can see there's options here for the name, the data type. So what type of information are you going to be putting into this column? And then you see a lot of kind of standard SharePoint ones that you have lookups, person or groups, et cetera. We can also do some advanced formatting if we wanted to. It's a little outside the scope of this workshop, but just know that that feature is available. Hit OK, you can see it there. Now, what's going to happen though is if I go and save this, and I go back to, let me just open this, let me duplicate this one. Let me go back to our site settings and refresh that cache. All right, and refresh this. You see it modified, that the setting was applied, and you see it here now, but nothing's there because we haven't mapped anything to it yet. So if we go back to our list rollup, and go back to our editing area, You go to our columns section, you see it's there. But then we have to add the data to it. So this is where we're getting the information to put into that list rollup. So we've got the tickets list and the archives list, and we could always add a new one if we wanted to. So just to show you, we could pull in, we could pull it from another site collection if we wanted to over here, or we can pull it from the same site collection. Let's say we want to pull in, purchase requests as an example. Right, and then so we get the view. We can allow a new entry or not for that particular list. And then we got our mapping. So this is how you define what appears in each of those columns you created in that column section. So you create a title, and I wanted to do purchase request because I want to show you it does not matter if it's the same name or not. So type of purchase could be put into the title field. Okay, we could do. Okay, we don't have category issue type. I can probably leave those blank. You don't have to map every single one, of course. So you can leave some of them blank. Let's say requester is going to be the purchase agent. Okay. Just to kind of show you, it doesn't have to be a one-to-one relationship. It doesn't have to look exactly the same. Status. Be like modified or created. All, things like that. So go ahead and hit edit. We'll save our settings. And if everything worked correctly, we'll go back to our cache. We'll go ahead and refresh that. All right, we got a couple pages of stuff here. Okay, it looks like maybe we didn't pull any purchase requests, all right. This is what happens when you configure things on the fly. I didn't test that connection with the purchase request before the webinar, unfortunately, but in theory, you should be able to see those purchase requests in here. Let's go back to our list rollup and we can just do another one real quick. Just super quick here. Here, data, add list, and I know we have stuff in our IT premium. And tickets, all items. And then we just do our maps. And I'm just going to do a couple of these just to get some information in there. All right. All right, so yeah, so you got 5 pages of stuff now instead of one. And here's all the ones from the IT premium site I just added, where I just mapped the title and nothing else. So you can see those things are in here now too. So you can create a whole compendium of things in your list rollup across multiple different sites, across different site collections, and see it all in one place. So you can see how useful and valuable that can be to show multiple lists in one view. Now, the other thing we want to show you here, I guess, Scott, any pertinent questions on that one before I move on to the next phase with the reporting?
There's no questions on list rollup at this point, but if people have questions, they can always email them in, but none in the webinar screen right now.
Okay. So. All right. So I'll move on to the final piece here that I wanted to talk about today with the list, using that list rollup in the report center. So the report center, or the reporting tool, you got a whole bunch of different reports you can create here. I'm not going to go through that in detail today. That'll be saved for another workshop another time. But I wanted to show you that you could use that list rollup that we just created in a report. So if I do a list rollup demo, you can see you have that option to choose the list rollup, and you can see you have the one that you chose here. Now, if you're coming in from the report perspective and you don't see the list rollup that you want, you could hit this settings box. Let me go back to that. There's this settings icon here. Click that. It'll open up a new page, and you can go and create a new list rollup. So if you thought you had one and it's not there, you can go and create it. Not a big deal. Actually, one more thing. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this when I was talking about the list rollups. And it's going to be exactly the same kind of way you add it to a page as you would with the list views. You can see there's the options to add it to a page. You can then choose your definition, and you got some text and background color you can put around it. And then just as comparison, just to complete out that thought with the modern UI, it's the same kind of concept that we're talking about over here, where you just add this link here. Click the add new web part icon, and do roll up, and you got that list roll up Core Canyon. So you're going to do it in the modern view the same you would in the list view in the modern view. So it just keeps a consistency with how we're handling things in the different types of views that you're using. Some folks are probably fully over into modern. Some folks are probably fully still on classic, or they're on-prem, so they can't go to modern. That's fine. That's why I want to point out these key differences that you have here between those options. But the modern way of adding web parts is going to be consistent. You go to the page directly and do it. And in the classic mode, you go and use this add option over here. All right. Now let's go into our reporting tool again. And so you're going to have a lot of the same functionality, a lot of the same things that you would normally have in the irregular report. So let's do category. Category, you can see the list of options here is just the options that you have in the list rollup view itself. So again, if you don't see something here and you're like, oh, shoot, I need to capture that data too, you just go and edit this and add it to your list rollup settings. And we can do assigned staff. Then we're going to do an account untitled. So you didn't bring in an ID, so that's interesting. But okay, so we'll go ahead and leave that as is. And then you have the report preview. Oh, I didn't choose a chart type, that's why. All right, so we go ahead and choose that. And you see kind of the different results here, and you can see, well, the category was none because I pulled in all those IT premium tickets without a category, so that's going to show up here. So if I don't map the data, the report's not going to know what to do with it, right? It's just that's just the way it's going to work. We can also do this by, since I did pull in for some of them, we can do created month and year. Okay, so we did something like that. So you can see, across multiple lists, across multiple tickets, you can see the same, that information in your report. All right, so I'm not going to belabor the reports too much. If there's any specific questions, maybe we can address a couple of them, but we're going to save reporting for kind of a different workshop. But that was pretty much the, all I wanted to cover today. So again, I'll check in if there's any specific questions that we want to go into, or Scott, if you saw anything that you want to touch on that maybe we didn't touch on today.
No, I just think that you should also mention maybe about conditional formatting and things like that. Like, if you do want to show different things in the view, you can, or I guess you covered some of that, right? Or
yeah. So if we're talking about the conditional formatting, that's going to be there whether you're using a SharePoint list view or the Croquet list view, right? So we don't have any specific settings in here other than to, I think you can disable the conditional formatting. That option is here to disable it in the Croquet list view. But you can, so it's going to work. The conditional formatting should work in the Croquet list view and the SharePoint list view, however you have it configured in that conditional formatting.
Okay, conditional formatting is another one of our web parts in NITRO Studio that you can use to like highlight high priority or overdue tickets, or put a progress bar or KPIs, just in case people don't know too much about that particular feature, it's another really cool way to highlight some of the list items, which ones are, you know, you want to take notice of, or a progress bar, or have a KPI on or something. We should cover that in a workshop, because that's actually a really cool addition. You know, really helps you look at a view. You know, a SharePoint list view can be kind of like very static, almost boring in a way. But when you have it like highlighted by which ones are you know, overdue or something like that, and which ones need attention, and which one, you know, KPIs and progress bars and percentage done, that adds a lot more flair to the list, and a lot more effective information. Yeah,
That's absolutely correct, and it probably does make sense to mention it in a little more detail on this call, because we're talking about, you know, what we're talking about is different ways that you can present your data in a dashboard. And, you know, I spent a lot of time talking about how, you know, the difference between SharePoint list view and Croquinian list view. But there's, you know, regardless of that differentiation, you have that conditional formatting. And I think that absolutely, we can dive into that one a little bit since we have some time here.
Yeah, NITRO Studio has a lot of cool features, and this is one of them. That's really interesting. I don't think people realize you can do colors, you can do progress bars, KPIs, icons. You know, if it's like a certain category, flag it. If it's from a certain user, flag it. A certain priority, flag it with different icons. You know, things like that, or different colors. Put progress bars on there and things like that.
Yeah, these all have this condition. So you can have multiple conditions on the same list, of course. So in this case, we're highlighting our high priority, but instead we want to do an icon where we're doing like, I don't know, maybe not that, maybe a red star. You know, these are high priority items, right?
You can even upload your own icons if you want. You know, right there on the upload.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you're these are just ones we've shipped out of the box that are kind of standard, but yeah, certainly you can put in your own. And then we can save that. So if we want to add a new one, and say category, we'll highlight ones where request is resolved. So in some cases, in some of our tools, you can mark the request or an issue as resolved rather than closed. And that you might want to highlight those so that you know to come back and do something with them. So request as equals resolved. And we can give them a specific color. Could be maybe greenish color, or whatever you want to do. You got the full hexadecimal palette here that you can work with. And again, save. And then the column here, this one is just to note specifically that this column has to be in the view in order for it to work. So it doesn't actually have to be the same column that you define up here. It could be a different column, but whatever column you select here has to be in the view in order for the conditional formatting to be triggered. Otherwise, you won't see it. In this case, maybe we do want to put just request status on there. Do that. And then we can do, or we can do it as a progress bar where we want to, you know, there's a column here. These are like number columns that it's looking for, right? So we got a couple of number columns that we've added on here. I think these are just added for demo purposes. But essentially it's looking for that range. And this makes sense on task lists. On a SharePoint task list, you have that %complete field. So you can use that %complete field and you have your min value, your max value, and it's going to show a progress bar as to how far along in that completion it is. So, you know, you can tie that into some of our other tools for automatically updating that number column. Maybe anytime a task gets completed, it updates a number on the main item and it shows a different progress, how far along you are in that resolving that ticket or completing the tasks. But yeah, definitely a lot of options there. But yeah, absolutely. This works independently of the Croquinian versus SharePoint list view. It just gives you another way to highlight items and really kind of direct attention to things that might need attention.
Okay, yeah, that's something to explore. We have some documentation on it, but there was one question that came up about reporting. Are you done with conditional formatting? You think that's enough? Yeah, we should go into conditional formatting, show it. Looks really cool when you have like the bars and the stars and everything going on in the list. But back in reporting, back in the NITRO reporting. Oh, yeah, unless you're showing it or something.
No, go ahead. I was just changing things back to the way they were.
Oh. The reporting, what happens is the reports change color every time, you know, the columns, but there's a way to set it to be permanently one color.
Yes, there is. Yeah, and you'll see that here. If I hit show report preview again, it's going to
Yeah, it does that just
change.
by the nature of the tool, but there is one way to set it.
Yep, themes.
But this is
Okay,
now
so
we're getting into reporting, but you know, if people
that's
want to,
okay. No,
yeah,
no,
they
that's
can.
great. I mean, if that's what people have questions on, let's dig into it. Manage report themes. So we don't have any themes created. We'll go ahead and create one. And the theme is designed to, it gives you options for changing around what that, maybe what that table looks like when you display it. But it also allows you to change the colors of the chart. So, and I usually mention this on our reporting training. So if anyone had that and didn't hear this, then I apologize. But what we always do, the way it is by default is that those are going to be chosen, those colors are going to be chosen automatically, right? That's just, for whatever reason, that's just kind of the way it's designed. But if we want to fix it or set it into a certain color scheme, we have these defined color palettes here. And again, these are fully customizable. We picked some really highly contrasting ones just so when you put things together, you can really tell the difference between the values. I don't know if these, I'm not a designer, I don't know if these really kind of go together, but
Well,
you
it
can
doesn't really
certainly,
matter.
no, but you can play around with it and have your own color scheme as long, just obviously the caution is make sure they're not all red or all the same, very similar shade of red.
Well, fixed color would give you all the same color of every
It
like
would.
bar, every column, every
It would.
line
That's
on the
true.
graph. Yeah,
That's
so
true.
if you want
Yeah.
that, you can use fixed. Automatic is where it changes all the time. Like with the default that we're talking about, and define is like the 10 different bars or graphs or lines. I mean, bars or lines or columns would be those colors, right?
Yes. That's it. That's right.
So that's how we do that. Oh,
Yeah.
here's
So
a question.
create the theme. Yeah.
Oh, let's see what it says. Is there potential to have themes for charts be represented in patterns as well as colors?
I don't think they have.
Accessibility standards require that charts represent data more than just color. That's a really good question, and let's look into that. If we can do patterns, would be like dots or I guess hash marks or something. Let's look into that and see if we can put that in. That's a good question. Right now, it's colors, as far as I know.
Yeah, if we could, whoever asked that question, if they can send in more information about those standards,
Well,
we'd love
we'll
to.
contact. Yeah, we'll contact her.
Okay, yeah, well, we'll definitely dive into that because that's something we definitely want to have in our program. So
Yeah,
we'll definitely look into that and see
or
what we
him.
can do to, or him or her, whoever, and
Yeah.
figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Good
definitely
question.
choose that one.
Yeah. Yeah, we try to build accessibility into all the programs, but there's things like that that are important for people to point out that is it's an issue to concern about. Okay, good. Yeah, good.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to point out, you can see it's doing the consistent color scheme now based on the defined colors that we had.
Yep.
So
Great.
that's all I need to do is add that theme and you're good.
We covered a lot. List view, list roll up, conditional formatting, a little on reporting. We also have the
Yep.
list search too, right? I mean, that's another option, but that's another question, another tool.
Yeah, maybe we should save that one. That's got a lot of options too.
It does. That's a really
Yeah.
powerful tool, list search.
And see, this is good. This is why it's we're going to use this time wisely to create get these types of webinars going, get these types of workshops going. And certainly, feel free if you guys out there on the call have any suggestions on webinars or workshops that you want to dive into, let us know. We're happy to take feedback on that and set up our next workshops based on customer feedback. What do you guys want to learn? What do you want to know about? We'll get that scheduled. So you can pop that into the question box, or you can go ahead and send us an email about that. And we'll take it into consideration, and that'll help us fill out our workshop schedule. So definitely feel free to do that. So again, I did promise I'd point this out at the end of the call. Unless there's any other questions we want to dig into before we do this?
No, those were the last questions there.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we're gonna have these important webinars coming up next week. There's this one on the request manager, which is very similar to the IT help desk and facilities and whatnot, but it's you can use it, especially with the way things are with distributed workforces becoming more of a requirement than a luxury. This is something you guys might want to sign on to and take a look at. How can you use the Crooked Request Manager? Maybe something you have, maybe something you don't have yet. You can take a look at how you can use it for your own purposes. And during this crisis, I want to also point out that if you are not currently using it, we can let you use it for 6 months for free to get your kind of help us through this crisis period. Beyond that, we're going to be going into the kind of similar vein. We're going to be digging into the employee self-service portal. This will also help, I think, with distributed workforces, having a self-service portal that folks can come to, a one-stop shop for them to submit requests or get information about what's going on, or updates on the technology or whatnot. That can be a number of other things. There's lots of stuff you can do with that self-service portal. But that's going to be coming up in mid-April, about a month from now. And then as far as the workshops, those are kind of more general webinars. But as far as the workshops, right now we just have this. We're going to, like I said, we're going to be filling this out a little more. But we have this one on the advanced approvals for using custom actions and workflows. Plan for that one to be closer to an hour, because it's going to take some time to go through the whole process there. But certainly, feel free to sign on to that one. It's a great way to automate workflows, automate those approvals really easily. It gives you a way to, in this one especially versus our advanced approval app, gives you a way to use the lazy approval, which is probably going to be a little more critical in these distributed workforce situations. So that users can approve things via email, and it just makes it really easy for them. But yeah, other than that, I think that's all I had. We thank you for your questions.
Wait a minute, James.
Go ahead, Scott.
James, there's a team summit, mini summit we're having on Microsoft Teams next Thursday. It's a week from today. We're going to have 3 MVPs showing how to use Teams visions and strategies. It's the first session. The next one is about kind of become a Teams rock star, and the other is about using private channels in Teams. So these are 3 Teams workshops that we're doing, webinars. It's a mini summit on next Thursday. We haven't got it up on the board yet because just coming together in the last few days, as we feel like people are doing a lot more remote work and using Teams. So we wanted to get information out to the community, and we got 3 MVPs that we know are going to, Microsoft MVPs are going to be showing that. So we'll be sending a notice about that probably later today or tomorrow, and have people sign up for that those webinars. And we're just getting the landing page together and everything, and going to provide that as free resource on Teams to community. A lot of good information. If you're not using Teams, or if you want to use Teams, this would be a good couple of 3 sessions to come to and see, get a lot of good information from experts in the Teams collaboration world. So just want to mention that next Thursday, that's March 27th, a week from today, and we'll send out information on it as soon as we have it ready.
All right, great. Thanks for that. Thanks. Yeah. I didn't have much information as you guys, so thank you for piping in there and talking about that. But very good. Again, thank you everyone for your time today. Really appreciate it. And again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas on upcoming workshops, let us know. We're happy to take that information. So I hope everyone stays healthy and has a good rest of their day. And take care.
Thanks, James.